Hi everyone, welcome to Oracle Code Online. This is the session Accelerated Overkill Jet Visuals JavaScript HTML5 Cloud Development, and my name is Shai Schmelzer. I am Director of Product Management at the group at Oracle that builds the Oracle Cloud Development tools. So we're basically the guys who are building tools and frameworks that are used both by Oracle internally to build our cloud services, our cloud products, as well as by our customers. And in this session I'm going to talk about how we are accelerating the way that we're developing the new UI layers for our cloud services. And those UI layers are based on the JavaScript HTML5 technology stack. So the first thing that we should probably establish is that we're not the only ones who are doing JavaScript development. In fact, if you look at recent market surveys, you would see that JavaScript is quickly becoming the most popular and most used development language out there. For example, these are the results from the developer survey that is done by Stack Overflow, and you are probably familiar with Stack Overflow. If you're not, this is basically a website that allows developers to ask questions and give answers to a bunch of technical questions. In a lot of cases, if you run into an error or a question while developing and you Google that question, you'll end up on a Stack Overflow thread that would explain to you how to solve the issue. So every year they do a survey among their developer community and ask them what are they doing. And one of the questions they ask is, what language are you using? Okay. And as you can see, as of this year, JavaScript is the most in use language out there. A lot of developers are doing JavaScript development. Okay. When you look at what developers are doing, a lot of them are building backends for applications, and a lot of them are also building frontends, and many of them are also doing what they call full stack. So they are building both the frontend and the backend for their application. And of course, there's a big chunk there, basically about 20%, that are also developing mobile applications. Now, one of the nice things about this HTML5 and JavaScript technology stack is that it allows you to build all of those layers for web application as well as for mobile application. That's probably one of the reasons that this technology stack has grown so much over the last several years. Now, the main problem with JavaScript is that, many people are using it out there, but there isn't actually any standard set of frameworks that simplify development with the JavaScript area. It's not that there's a lack of frameworks. In fact, there are too many of them. If you go out there and you Google JavaScript framework, you'll probably find a lot of options out there that you can choose from. Whether it's things like Angular or React or XJS or a bunch of other stuff that is out there. In fact, one of the problems with the JavaScript ecosystem is this volatility and the fact that frameworks pop up and disappear too frequently, making it hard for you to commit to a single framework for a long-running project where you would need a framework to be there all along supporting you in your development efforts. And that's one of the problems that we saw when we came to build our own newer user interfaces for our cloud services. Okay. There were frameworks out there, a lot of them, there were a lot of libraries out there, a lot of them were providing good solutions, but we couldn't find a framework that would suit us end to end and that won't lock us into that framework for a very long time, giving us a chance that if the framework somehow dies or stops being developed, our development would also get stuck. So what we decided to do instead is take a more modular approach to how we do JavaScript development. Okay. We basically looked out there, we found a bunch of useful JavaScript libraries, we picked those up, and then we added a bunch of JavaScript libraries that we developed in-house. And those JavaScript libraries help us achieve some of the capabilities that were missing out there in the market. The end result of this effort is something we call Overkill Jet, or the Overkill JavaScript Extension Toolkit. And what it is a modular, enterprise-ready, open-source toolkit that simplifies the development with a JavaScript HTML5 REST stack. So one of the interesting things about Overkill Jet is that it's an open source project. You can find it on GitHub. You can go to overkilljet.org and find all the information about Overkill Jet. Two of the characteristics of Overkill Jet that are important for us are this modularity aspect that allows us to pick and use specific frameworks and allows you to also pick and use specific parts of Overkill Jet. You don't have to use the full toolkit. You can use just the parts that you like. And you can plug in other libraries for other layers of your solution. And the other aspect that was important for us is enterprise readiness. And this comes in the form of support for things like accessibility, internationalization, and aspects of performance as well. Those are things that are very important for us when we're looking into a solution that we can base enterprise products on. So this is the Overkill Jet architecture. As you can see, it's based on the MVVM architecture, which is very popular for this technology stack, a model view model solution. Okay, and let's look at the various components that make up this architecture. So we start with the view layer, where we have the Overkill Jet UI components. Those components are based on the Web Components standard. Okay, and they're basically a collection of over 100 UI components, I believe now. That range from buttons and radio buttons and checkbox and drop-down lists to more complex things like tables and lists and trees, to a lot of data visualization focused components, whether it would be charts or diagrams or gauges, and a lot of others. Now, those components leverage technologies such as SAS for changing the look and feel of the components, and such as the Hammer library to give us touch gesture awareness when we're using them on mobile devices. You can also package components as what we refer to as Composite Component Architecture, or CCAs, and those are basically becoming reusable UI components based again on the Web Component standard that you can use across multiple applications, and you can also bring in external custom components. This builds in a layer of reusability for your architecture, where you can leverage components across applications, across companies. For the view model layer, we're using the Knockout.js library. Knockout.js is a very popular two-way binding library for building JavaScript application. And we have a specific model layer called the Overkill Jet Common Model API that allows us to access not just REST as the source for data for our components, but also a WebSocket channel. For navigating between pages, maintaining single page application and history and back button compatibility, we use our own Overkill Jet routing solution. This is a library that allows us to do all sorts of smart navigations inside our application. And to smartly manage the loading and unloading of resources, we use the open source require.js library. So overall, this is the Overkill Jet architecture that we're using today to build a lot of our user interfaces. As you can see, we're using a bunch of open source libraries, okay, such as Knockout and jQuery and Hammer and require.js, okay, and we also added a bunch of UI components and routing and validation and converter, and a model layer and responsive layout and internalization capabilities, all packed up as libraries that you can pick up and use in your implementation, whether you're using Jet or no. Okay. So this is kind of the modular approach of Overkill Jet. One key focus for us for Overkill Jet is to support not just the web user interfaces, but also mobile interfaces. Now, one thing to explain here when we're talking about mobile, we're not just talking about a web application that renders properly and in a responsive way when you're running it from the browser on your mobile device. We're actually talking about an on-device mobile application. That's an application that installs on your device, it has an icon on your device, and it runs and executes on your device. We're using the hybrid architecture based on Cordova, again an open source solution for creating those hybrid applications. And we have a bunch of utilities that we created to allow you to very quickly create mobile applications using Overkill Jet, including the ability to scaffold an application from the command line, the ability to build and serve those applications. The components themselves support native look and feel for iOS, Android, and Windows platform. and a lot of the mobile paradigms that you might be familiar with, things like animation, swipe motion, pull to refresh, navigation drawer, and other things that make your application look and behave like a native mobile application. At the end of the day, we package everything as a Cordova installation that you download from the app stores and install on your device. We also enhance the Cordova ecosystem by providing some unique plugins that we built for things like offline data storage, for aspects like security, and you can find those and use them along with your mobile application, whether you're using Jet or not. So let me do a quick demo of Overkill Jet and what you can find there. So let me show you a quick demo of Overkill Jet. I'm not actually going to build an application, but I wanted to show you that if you go to overkilljet.org, you get to our website. We have a lot of information here to get you started. Okay, just command lines that would install the whole environment on your machine. But specifically, I wanted to show you our cookbook. The cookbook shows you all the components that we provide, and for each component you can have a drill down into various behaviors and capabilities it provides you. Okay? So let's look, for example, at the chart component. Okay? We have multiple chart components, so let's pick up, for example, a bar chart. Okay? And each one of those pages would give you an example of the component running, okay, with the various behavior. And then it would show you the full code that you need in order to implement it. Okay, so for example, for this part of the page, this is the HTML that is being used, and this is the chart component, the Overkill Jet chart. We're using a bar chart over here. And you can also see the JavaScript that is involved here. Okay, again, we're using require.js to minimize our resources. We're using knockout binding. And here are the values, for example. So those are static values. And what is nice is that you can change those values. For example, let's make those a little higher. Okay. And then when we click to apply the changes in the code, you would see the graph updated immediately in front of you. So this is kind of our sandbox environment for you to play with the various components, see the capabilities that they offer, for each one, specific capabilities such as selection, for example, for a chart where you can select a chart component. All of those are accompanied by code samples that you can copy and paste into your environment and just develop your application using all our UI components. And beyond having UI components, it's worthwhile mentioning other features of Overkill Jet, which are covered under the framework capabilities. Okay. This includes the common model capabilities, the advanced router capabilities, the composite components, and others. So let's look, for example, at the router just to see how it behaves. Okay, so we have here a scenario with multiple tabs. So each time that I click on a tab, you can see the data here changes. And the nice thing that the routers know to do, for example, is you can set it up so when you click back, we actually navigate to the previous tab we were on. Okay, so rather than a previous page, we're actually aware of navigation inside the single page application. That's one of the capabilities of the router that we provide with Overkill Jet. So again, if you want to learn about Overkill Jet, just go to overkilljet.org and you'll have all the information you need in order to get started. Alright, so we saw Overkill Jet. It looks very nice. There's only one problem, at least in my mind. And the problem is that when you look at development of Overkill Jet, or in fact any other JavaScript framework out there, this is the experience you're going to have. You're going to see a lot of code. Okay, coding in JavaScript might be easy to do, but it's not very easy to debug and figure out what's wrong once you made any mistake. Okay. In general, this is a problem not just with JavaScript, but with any language, but JavaScript actually has some unique problems to it in that space. And this characteristic of JavaScript is problematic for a lot of companies that are looking to actually increase their developer productivity. So I've been in the software development business and in the application development business for a long time. I'm quite old, to be frank. And when you look at the development productivity, you sometimes have a sense that we might be regressing. Okay, so back in the 90s, where I started my development of business application, we used tools that look like this. And for those of you who are from the 90s, you might recognize some of them. There's Visual Basic over here, Power Builder, and even a tool called Oracle Forms that Oracle created. Now, all of those tools had some common characteristics. One aspect is that when you were designing your user interface, you were having a visual area where you can drag and drop components onto this visual area to design your pages visually. Okay. Then you would set properties for those UI components using a property inspector. And all of those tools also made it very easy to connect and fetch information from data objects. Okay, business objects that usually were stored in your database were very easy to connect to those user interfaces. And this created a boom in the number of business applications that were developed with those tools. Now, if you compare this to the development experience with JavaScript framework, you probably see the problem that I'm facing. Coding everything leads to a lot of opportunities for mistakes, for errors, for something that you switched one letter around and you would spend the next 2 hours to try and figure out what happened there. So, in my mind, it's probably time that we have visual development experience also for this JavaScript HTML and REST architecture. So the architecture is great. We just need to make sure that the development tools match the architecture and give us productivity. And Oracle is actually building such a tool. It's part of what is referred to in the market today as low-code development platform ecosystem. Okay? A low-code development platform are kind of the new name to what was known in the 90s as RAD development tool, Rapid Application Development Tools. And they are focused on creating a much more visual and declarative approach to developing application. Okay? Bringing development with those new technologies to a much broader audience, so you don't have to be an expert JavaScript coder in order to create an application. You can become a productive developer even if you're what we refer to as a rapid developer, and sometimes even if you're a business analyst. Most of those tools focus on creating business applications. So you might not use them to build your next Facebook or eBay interfaces, but if you're building the applications that run those businesses at the back end, those tools can help you a lot. And I'm going to talk today about the Oracle offering in that area, which is a tool called, or a service called, Oracle Visual Builder Cloud Service. The Oracle Visual Builder Cloud Service is a cloud-hosted platform that allows you to build and host your applications. We cover both web and mobile application. Again, responsive web applications or on-device mobile application. And we focus on allowing you to create those applications in a faster way by removing the need to do any installation, everything is in the cloud, and by providing you with a visual development experience when building the application. Let me show you a quick demo of the current version of Oracle Visual Builder Cloud Service, and that's the version that has been around here for a couple of years now. So let's see a demo of Oracle Visual Builder Cloud Service, and I'm going to create a new application. It can be a web or a mobile, so we'll start with a web application, and let's create a project planner application. We can choose one of our UI templates, and those are basically just skins that are based on CSS files and HTML files that define the structure of a page. Let's use, for example, something that looks like the Oracle SAS application. By the way, you can add your own templates over there. I'm going to have one area in our application where we'll show project, and another one where we can show, for example, employees. When we click Finish, Visual Builder Cloud Service takes us into the Visual Page Editor. This is where we can customize and build our application. Specifically, this is what you see is what you get environment. You can click on items and modify them. For example, you can add a nice logo of your company to the top of the page. You can change the title. like that. On the left side, you have a collection of UI components, and you can just drag and drop them into the page. For example, let's add a table component. Now, table component needs to store information somewhere or get information from somewhere, and you can create business objects directly here. So let's create a business object called project. We can define fields such as name, budget for the project, and the budget can be a currency field, and we can even have a due date, which can be a date. You can see that as I'm designing my business object and my page, I can already see how my page is going to look like. We can enable various operations on our business objects and enable things like searching, advanced searching, and sorting. Let's click finish, and now we can actually run our little application, okay, and create some projects. So maybe we have an office party that we need to organize. We have $2,000 to do this, and it's due in 2 weeks from now. Okay, let's add another one. Like that. Okay, you can also have an edit page that allows you to update information. For example, if you got a little bit more money to spend, you can just update it on this page like that. Now you can go back into the UI designer, clicking here, and you can now modify the page. So one of the nice things here is that I can change, of course, the default look and feel and move things around. So let's move some of the fields over here to the left, and maybe add another field like a description of this project over to the right side. Okay. Okay. Now if we run this, we can add a description to our office party. Right. You can also add capabilities into the UI, such as clicking on a field that would do an action. Okay, so let's add an action for clicking on a field that would go into the edit page. Okay, we can actually switch to live mode over here, click, and navigate to this page. Let's create an application that is a little bit more advanced. Let's create another splitting over here and drop another table on the page. This will allow us to create another business object. We'll call it tasks, and this would be a list of tasks that we have in our project. So we'll have a task name, maybe we'll have the cost of the task as well, and we can define also who's the owner of the task. And the owner can be a lookup that we have of employees. Okay, so let's add some employees over here. Maybe we have Jane and Dave and Joe. Right. So now if we run our little application, we have the office party. We know that we need to, one of the tasks is to get balloons, and we have $100 for this, and we know that Dave can do this one. Okay, so another one. Like that. Of course, just putting in text data is kind of boring, so of course you can add some data visualization into the page. We have a bunch of charts, for example, and you can take a chart, drop it over here, and say that you want to see the cost of the tasks for your project and their breakdown. Okay, change things like title. Right. So here's our little application allowing you to track a project and the tasks and who does the task. If you think about what we just created here, we actually created a backend for our application consisting of 3 business objects. One of them is the project, the other one is the task, and the other one is the lookup of employees. Then we exposed those as REST services and created a Jet-based user interface on top of those business components. And we did this all in a declarative, easy way. By the way, the application that you create can be responsive to the size of the screen. So if you resize it to a small screen, you can see it reorganizes. And you can even customize the behaviors of this application. For example, you can say that on a mobile device, you don't want to see this field. Okay, so let's hide it. And you can say that on a mobile device, instead of showing this field, or sorry, this table as a table, you want to see it as a list and maybe hide the owner. Okay, so now you have a different display on a small device, okay, compared to a bigger screen, like that. In your business objects, you can also customize the business object by adding new fields. For example, let's add a total expenses so far field. This would be again a currency field, and we can indicate that this field is an aggregation. Basically, we're going to go over the tasks and we're going to total the cost of the tasks. Now that we have this new piece of information, we can add it to this screen, for example, as a gauge component. So we're going to show the total expenses on a range between 0 and the budget of our project. So here's our little completed application. We can add a task. Get a DJ, specify the cost, specify the owner, save the data, and see the update here, over here. And we just built a nice little business application in a few minutes, all done declaratively using Visual Builder Cloud Service. So as you can see, the development here is very easy. Okay. Now if you look under the hood into the actual technology stack that we're using, you'll see that we're using Overkill Jet to create the UI experience for both web and mobile application. We have business objects that are stored in a database and are exposed through a set of REST services. The database, by the way, is an Oracle database. And then we enable you to connect the UI and the REST services very easily with a builder. Now, when we showed Visual Builder Cloud Service in this form to developers, a lot of them liked it, but they always had additional things that they wanted to do. The declarative nature was perfect for them, but they also wanted in some cases to dive into code and be able to extend the functionality even further. They also wanted to be able to more easily call out to external sources of information, not just the sources of information that are created as business object in Visual Builder Cloud Service, but also any external REST service. So to do that, we developed the newer version of Oracle Visual Builder Cloud Service. Okay. This newer version focuses still on providing productivity through visualization, but it also allows you to have direct access to the code to create more complex things. You will still get visual benefits from visually designing your page layout, visually designing your page flow diagram, creating actions and logic in a visual way, accessing REST services and defining the access to them in a declarative way, and creating your business object and business logic in a visual declarative way. So let's see a demo of the new Oracle Visual Builder Cloud Service. So let's build a new application with the new Visual Builder Cloud Service. We're going to create an application that tracks information about celebrities. I'm going to call it Celebs. And as you can see, it can be a mobile application or a web application, and it can connect to data in business object and in REST services. We're going to start by creating a business object. Now, you can create a business object directly from here, okay, step by step, defining the object and the field, or you can choose to take kind of a shortcut and use the data manager to create a business object based on Excel spreadsheets, for example. So I have an Excel spreadsheet over here. Okay, it includes 99 records about the richest celebrities in the last year, or basically the celebrities that made the most money. Now, once I created this business object, I can go over and I can modify it. For example, I can add additional fields. So let's add another field. We'll call it the country field. Okay, this would be a text field, like that. You can, in addition, add business rules for your business object. You can define security. And one interesting point here is the endpoints. And what you'll see here is that we have the full set of REST methods on our celebrities object, including the ability to get a specific celebrity based on their ID. So once we actually created here is not just a business object that stores data in a table in a database, it also is the full backend REST-enabled service, okay, that we can now use in this application as well as in other applications. Alright, so let's go to the next step, and this would be to create a web application. Okay, so we're going to create a new application, and this is a visual page editor, and we have all sorts of components on the left that we can drag into the page. Can set properties and basically design our user interface like that. Let's add a table to the page. This table can be connected to data, and this data can come from, for example, our business object using the REST method for getting all the celebrities. We can choose which fields we want to show in the table. And now we have a table with the celebrities displayed on the page. Using the quick starts, we can also add an edit page. Now, an edit page actually is going to do two operations. It's first going to fetch the information about a specific celebrity based on their ID. And the next step is actually updating this celebrity information using the patch method. Okay. Let's choose which fields we want to allow people to update. Let's allow them to update the age and the country and maybe even the earnings. Right, so let's run our little application, and we can click on a celebrity, go to edit the celebrity information and update the country code. Like that. Alright, so we've seen how to create a little application based on a business object. Now, what happens if some of the information sits outside of your application, for example, in some external system that exposes a REST service? Let's look at such a REST service over here. This REST service, you give it the code of a country, and it returns a full set of information about this country. So let's say I want to use this REST service in my application. Let's see how we do that. Just like we added a business object, we can add a service connection. This service connection can be based on a specification, for example on a Swagger specification. It can come from a pre-populated catalog of services, or we can define one on the fly, which is what we're going to do here. This service retrieves one record, and we're going to call this service get country. Okay. We can define security aspects of how we access this REST service. We can define header parameters or URL parameters. For example, here we need a parameter which is the country code. And then we can test the service just to make sure that it actually works. Here are the results about the US. We can copy the structure and create our little connection to the service. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our page. Okay, and we're actually going to do the next changes not on this page, but actually on the Edit Celebrities page. Let's do one over here. And what we want to do on this page is we want to define a new data type based on the service structure. So we're going to go to the Get Country service, and here's the set of information that is returned. You can shape your service returned values over here, but I'm just going to select all of them for now and create a new data type. We'll call it the country type over here. Now that we have a type, we can base a variable on this type. So let's create a new variable. We'll call it country info, and it's based on this new data type that we just created. Alright, so it has all those fields. Now that we have a place where information would be stored, let's create some UI to display this information. To do that, I'm going to take and add a horizontal line over here, and then I'm going to add a few fields into my page. So add a couple of input text fields, and maybe even a number field down here. Okay, so what we want to show about this set of data is this one would show us the name of the country. Okay, this can show us the capital of the country, and this one can show us the population. Alright, now the data for the field itself is going to come from the variable that we created. So the country info has the name of the country. It also has the capital of the country, as well as the population. What we need now is to actually call this REST service and get this information. We can do it in various ways. One way to do it is to add a button to our page. Let's add a button over here, and we'll title it More Info, like that. Now, this button can have an event, like the click event on a button. And over here we have a visual way to represent a logic flow. For example, here we're going to first call a REST service. I'm going to map it to the service definition we added to get a country. This requires a parameter, and this parameter can come from the celebrity record where we have a country code, like that. We can also specify that the return type of the information is in a country type format. Then we can take the returns from this REST call. Let's call this one country call. Okay. And we're going to assign those to the variables on the page. So we can again visually take the results from the country call, which is this structure of data, and put it into the country info, which has the same data structure. And we can do it field by field, or since the structure is basically the same, we can just drag and drop like this to create the mapping between the two. Alright, let's run our little application now. Okay, so we have a bunch of celebrities. We can click on one, and then when we click More Info, we can get information about the country the celebrity is from. So now our application is a little bit more educational. So let's see a few other things that are worthwhile knowing about this environment. So when we created this celebrities page, okay, over here, we created a table. We did all everything visually up until now. What I wanted to show you is that you actually have access to the code of the page. And if you look at the code, we have a call here for OJ table, which is the Jet table component. Let's look at some information about the Jet table component in the Jet website. Now, one of the things that the table component can do is column reordering. Okay, you can see the functionality. If you click here, you can move columns around. And if you go over to the info section, it would explain to you how to achieve something like that. You can also see the code for this directly in the page itself. What you need is this piece of code. Okay. And the nice thing is that you can also go directly to your page, and you can just add this property to your page, like that. We have a smart code editor here that would help you define those type of properties. If we run the application now, we can click on columns and move them around, like that. So this direct access to the Jet code of your page gives you much more flexibility in the type of UIs that you can create, in the complexity and the dynamic nature of them. Let me show you one more thing that Jet can do for you. Jet has the concept of composite components. Composite components are components that are based on the web component architecture, which are usually a packaging of several UI components, some functionality, into a reusable component. For example, this is a little reusable component that allows you to have this kind of a flip code. Let's suppose that you wanted to use this component in your application. You can very easily download the component, like that. Okay. And then go back into Visual Builder, and if you scroll down over here, you'll see an area where you can add your custom component. Let's add our custom component from the download folder. And now we have a new component that we can use. So let's go to the Added Celebrities page. Okay, this is the page where we have been working so far. And let's add the new UI component to this page also. Let's add it just down here. Just like any other component, it has a bunch of properties. And we can actually assign them to values from our variable. For example, instead of the avatar picture, we can use the flag of a country. Instead of the name of the employee, we can use the name of the country. So again, pick up the name over here. And then again, we can basically add a bunch of other information to be displayed inside our page. Right, and let's run our little application now. Again, let's click on Drake, for example. And we know that Drake comes from Canada. Let's get some information about Canada. Okay, we can see their flag and additional information on the other side, possibly. So this was a quick example of how you will develop an application with Visual Builder Cloud Service. The interesting thing to see here is that we were able to build a complete application using the latest technologies without basically doing much of coding. Most of it was drag and drop, setting properties and connecting artifacts. However, when we need to, we can drill down into the code level as well as bring in custom components and custom code libraries to be used in our application. So that's it. This is what we're doing in terms of making development with JavaScript, HTML5 and REST technologies faster and more productive. If you want to try out this product or this service, just go to cloud.oracle.com/visualbuilder and click the Try It for Free button, and you'll be able to provision yourself an instance and start developing in a more productive way. Now it's time for any further questions that you might have. Please feel free to post them on the chat window and we'll answer them. Thanks everyone for attending. Hopefully this has been a useful seminar for you, and we'll see you in the next Oracle Code event.